Hello,
Hello, everyone.
hello, and welcome.
So great to see whether you're with us in the stream or you're watching this afterwards as a
Oh,
recording.
yeah, yeah. I just was scared there for a second that I thought we were. I didn't press the right button,
Oh,
but I
okay.
did. But
Oh,
I
yes.
did. But I did.
Yes, we are.
Sorry.
We are happy. We are
Running
happy.
NASA. Running
Thought
NASA.
maybe you weren't happy
No,
that
no, no. I'm super
people saw
happy.
us
I
or
am super happy. I'm super happy to be here. Mm,
I, you know, I hate to jump right into like something that's like a bit of a Debbie Downer.
let's not then.
Okay, okay.
No, no, you
I'll hold
can't.
it
No,
for
you
later.
can't. This is a safe
Actually,
space.
what I was going to say is that I know that we're all going through things, but I just wanted to say I really am sorry that your father passed away.
Oh, you're gonna do that before
No,
we
come on.
start? That's
No,
kind of
seriously.
rough.
People here care about you.
That's very
People here
sweet.
care about you. And Yvette's father passed away last week after a very, very long illness. We're not talking about months, we're talking about decades.
Yes.
Um, he was a wonderful man and a great father, a great husband, and the honoring of him at the ceremonies that preceded the funeral and then the funeral were wonderful, and I was an honor for me to be there.
Thank you.
And so we love you, Yvette.
Oh, so
We all
sweet.
love you, Yvette.
It's one of those things where, yeah, he did have a very, long battle. He had a brain tumor decades ago. He's actually a medical miracle,
Yes,
from that standpoint. But yes, he will be missed. We're glad that he's resting. And I know many of our community members and alumni members and folks that join us, um, you know, have experienced similar
of
loss,
course. Yes.
some even more tragic. I can't even imagine being a parent and losing a child, right? I think we
No.
all sort
And
of,
there's a lot of that going on in the world
yes,
right now.
yeah. So, but I appreciate that. And yeah, I think I don't know that I needed to put things into perspective because I feel like I have a pretty good perspective
Yes.
on stuff. But it's like remember when we were doing work with General Mills and they had
How can
that
I forget?
they had like that thing of like zoom in, zoom out. Like that was
Oh,
a
yeah.
planning
Yes.
method.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like that a little bit where, you know, and this is, I think, a good segue to our conversation today is that as futurists, we're sort of always zoomed out looking at the macro environment. And
Yes.
right now, that's a really tough headspace to be in all the time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I will say that, over the last couple weeks, I've gotten a bit of a reprieve from the horrors that are displayed on our, headlines
Yes.
every day.
TikTok and Instagram and all of it.
Obviously, this is not the way that you'd want that reprieve, but
Nope.
at the same time, you know, um these life events give you an opportunity to reconnect
Yeah.
with family members that maybe you haven't talked to, maybe you haven't, and even my brothers and I,
Yes.
even though we see each other almost every day because we're crazy and we all live in the same neighborhood, we had an opportunity. You reconnect in a different way
Yeah.
when, you lose a parent and you still have the other parent and you're helping the other parent and
Yes.
all of that. So thank you for that, for
No,
acknowledging that.
of course. And like you said, that's right. And it also makes me think that you all don't, unfortunately, it's really a shame. This I should step out of this seat and this should be taken over by Yvette and Nicole more often. You don't get to see Nicole's face. And so many of you love Nicole so much, and she's done so much for so many people. And she recently also lost her uncle. And so, Nicole, I know you're listening right now, and you probably agree with what Yvette said. And it's not something anybody wants to go through, but it's a time to reconnect. And for all of you who are just tuning in, Yvette has recently lost her father. And so, there's two things. One, it's sad, but I know you all love Yvette and you all love Nicole so much. And so this is a chance for you to just reach out to both of them and let them know how much you do love them. I know a lot of people do that on a regular basis. I certainly do. And like you said, the second thing is this is a chance also for us to think about what it means to be in communion and in family and to, what really matters.
Yeah, and of course, like as a futurist, as someone who practices foresight, whether you call yourself a futurist or not, we often say that once you've been exposed to these tools and these mental models, you really can't turn it off.
That's
And
right.
so, even through this, very difficult life experience, you can't help but view it through the lens of, a futurist and the long now and that perspective. And,
Well,
you
it's
know,
interesting you're saying that because I think that really does segue a lot to
yeah,
what we're talking about today.
yeah, I think, people who practice in this field sometimes they in my opinion sort of lose sight of the fact that this is a very human aspect of life to think about the future,
Of
to think
course.
about how it's connected to the past,
That's
to
right.
think about your legacy. When we talk about someone passing, we often think about their legacy. And yeah, so I again embrace my ability and that ability that I've unlocked from within myself to be a futures thinker, because I think it is the greatest gift. I was talking to
I do too.
um Gord from CPA Canada, Gord Beal, and a
Yes.
longtime friend of TFSX.
We did work with CPA Canada for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been years ago that.
Yeah. And I was just sharing with him actually the topic of today's podcast around scarcity and abundance and
Yeah.
imagination literacy,
Mm,
and just catching him up on all things futures thinking and foresight. And like you said, it had been years since we connected, but he went through our program and was a client and, says to this day, it really helps, give him a bedrock and supports him. But he is now working with youth and college age
that's
uh,
amazing. I love
kids and
that.
young adults.
I love
And
that.
he was just like, this would be so helpful for them.
Yes.
When I think we should do a whole podcast, a whole article about how foresight is really an important aspect of our mental health and the ability
I love
to
that.
equip
That's right.
ourselves and our children with the mindset to think in simultaneous multiples, to unpack their own biases,
Yes.
to see the
To be
world,
resilient.
to look at the world with an empathetic
Yes.
lens.
And to think transformatively, which is really another word for life-giving.
Yeah, to
And
adapt, to
to be able to plug
transform.
into life instead of being this mechanical, linear.
Yeah, I mean, it is the antidote to anxiety in many places, in
Yes.
many ways.
Yes.
And I find myself in stressful situations, whether it's in a personal sense, like I've just been through the last couple of weeks, or, just what's happening at a macro level in our world right now. I always go back to, and lean on futurist and foresight learnings
Yes.
because it is that muscle that you have to continue to train, but it,
Yeah.
it does become muscle memory and you
Yes.
don't even
Yeah.
realize
Yeah.
it. And I think, this chapter that we're moving into with the live stream, and we're really excited today to be going into
Yeah.
that first chapter of defying gravity this year. Really goes back to the roots of our podcast, where we wanted to
That's right.
showcase to everyone that everyday foresight can really help us tackle these big, scary, horrible, wicked problems in our world. And we can
That's right.
reframe them and create better futures. As we shared in last month's live stream, when we workshop only someone else's future, which is often dystopic, when we're only focused on stopping the bad guys or stopping the dystopia, we're essentially workshopping their future, the
That's
future
right.
they
That's right.
want. And we're rehearsing that future for them unknowingly, right?
Mm,
Unknowingly. And I'm
mm,
not saying that
that's
we
so
should
powerful.
stand idly by and let people do what they're doing. I'm not saying that. But at the same time, as a parallel path, we also need to be sharing what future is possible. What future do we want to create?
Yes.
What wicked opportunity do we see amidst the complexity of this wicked problem? And
Yeah.
so this year, we're going back and revisiting our first collection of podcasts, the
Mm,
first 7 months ever that we did of a podcast, which is some of our best work, I think, where we weekly went through foresight tools, unpacked a wicked problem, reframed it as a wicked opportunity. And so each of these live streams this year will look at 1 month's theme, which is 1 month's sort of wicked opportunity. This time we're going to talk about imagination literacy and
mm,
how a scarcity mindset is something we need to overcome, and how a scarcity mindset is being used right now to
mm.
control us,
Yes.
to fill us with fear,
That's right.
to make us distrust one another, and how that's not the future that we want to create. So it's these podcasts are several years old, but it's amazing how timely they still are. So I just wanted to share quickly, while people are still gathering. Let's see if I can get this to work. We haven't tested this yet, so this might be a bad idea, but we're gonna do it anyway. We're
I want
gonna
to
do
say,
it.
by the way,
Yeah.
hello to Petya. She's in the
Oh,
room
excellent,
here with
excellent.
us, our good friend. So,
Okay, so I'm gonna hope, and Nicole will tell me in a few seconds if this is not coming through. But essentially, I just wanted to share and remind you all that if you'd like to join us, and in a more intentional way this year with the live streams, we want to again let you know that as a member of the collective, so that's the subscription level of my TFSX, as a member of the collective, you automatically gain access to this self-directed course called How to Thrive in Uncertain Times.
mm,
And what we've done is we've basically curated the podcast that we're going to be using as a backdrop this year in our live streams. And you can go through and in a very easy way follow along. And so I'll just show you, for example, this today we're going to talk about imagination literacy. So we'll share this map with you all. This is a full month's worth of podcasts. So there's actually four little topics underneath this lesson. You can dive into the scarcity mindset and listen to the podcast in advance of our live stream. So if you haven't had a chance, you can always go back and listen now. If you want to prepare for next month's live stream, you can still join us without doing this. But if you want to have that backdrop and that context and have an even more robust experience with us, then I would encourage you to become a member of the collective, and you'll have access to this curated course that has all of the podcasts. So for next month, you'd want to just catch up and then listen to the People Cloud podcast. Down at the bottom of the main page of the course, it actually lists the schedule. So you can keep track of like
that's
when you want to
cool.
be listening,
That's
when you want
cool.
to be reading. Again, not required.
Yeah.
Obviously, this live stream will remain free. But we just thought, it's a really cool way to absolutely get more out of these live streams, because we'd
Yeah.
love for you all to come almost like a discussion
Yes.
session. These live streams tend to be a bit one-sided. It's a little bit hard because we have a little bit of a delay, but our goal this year is to equip you all so that you can come at the ready to these live streams, ask your questions, pose your statements. You all have so much to offer the community. We're just here to help facilitate and create the
That's
space
right.
for the conversation. So yeah, so today we're going to go from the tragedy of the commons to imagination literacy. We're not going to recap all of the podcasts, but rather talk about how this is still relevant today, give you current day examples of how we're seeing this manifest, and how, as a futurist, you can help your community really embrace a wicked opportunity of imagination literacy.
Yeah. I can't, it's hard for me to fathom why people wouldn't join the collective at $165 for the
Yeah,
entire year. And the amount of things that are on there, like this course, but you also have access to the Dragonfly Journey, which is going on all year long, that every other month we meet 90 minutes live online and you see people from around the world. We had 60 people on the last session, I
yeah.
think, or something like that. I can't remember what the number was, but it was something like that. And
We had a good
it was a
turnout
really
for
big
sure.
turnout. And then, the recipes and gosh, there's just so many things. And discussion groups, of course. One of the things that we never wanted to build was just like something where we're trying to generate discussion all the time because there's just so much noise out there and there's so many things for
Yeah,
people to do. And like for me to like go like, yeah, I'm going to get in this discussion room and discuss every day. But in the collective, it's so cool because you're like, oh, there's a course I'm taking and there's a thing that a
yeah,
community I'm a part of that meets live every other month and does pre-work. And so it's very different from your regular
yeah.
social media community.
Yeah, the
Yep.
collective also gives you access to the full digital toolkit.
Yep.
So there's lots of benefits there, but this year we've tried to, as you said, curate more educational and learning resources
Yes.
that go alongside the community aspect. So we hope you'll join us on My TFSX. Even if you don't, again, we're going to continue to offer these live streams completely free, and you could follow along absolutely. And so anyway, so today we're going to be talking about moving from tragedy of the commons or a scarcity mindset to imagination literacy, which is this idea of abundance. And, I think we shared this last time that, abundance is one of the things that we talk about as part of our values and beliefs here at TFSX. And Frank is smiling because it wasn't that long ago, although it's been a few years, that I said to him at one point, it's hard, it's hard to feel abundant when there's not abundance. And, to his credit, he snickered a little bit, but like in that moment, it was not time to laugh. Now I can laugh about it because
I feel like
obviously
it's still not time to laugh.
smart man. Um, but it's tricky, right? Because I think, this idea of toxic sort of positivity comes up
Right.
sometimes
And so
where
people
it's like, oh,
think,
I'm just gonna, I'm
yeah,
in my privileged world, I'm going to just say it's
right.
abundant. And you see it a little bit even today, like
That's right.
I'm going through
That's right.
social media and people are still selling outfits and like they don't know what to do. Like the world is burning, right? And we're just like, here's a new pair of pants I got from Old Navy. And it's like, oh my gosh, what is actually happening here? And or they're like, everything's going to be okay. And that toxic positivity
Yeah.
isn't helpful either. So that's not what we're talking about here. And I think you all can appreciate that. But, when we talk about tragedy of the commons or this idea of scarcity, you don't have to look far to see how that narrative is being pushed today.
Yeah.
And we have to
It's
ask
nothing
ourselves
new.
why.
It's
Yeah,
nothing new.
it's not new.
But and so my perspective, at least right now, has been, and you can have a different one because certainly I think there's multiple things going on that we're in a type of end game, and this is not the Avengers end game
The
movie.
last throes
Yeah.
of a dying system.
So I don't know how long last throws can last because
If
they can last a long.
no, if someone could share in the chat, how on average, how long does the last throw era last? Because it would be great if we had that type of insight.
Yes, because I got a feeling that last throws could last a while.
Yeah,
As a
well,
matter of fact, I would say they've already been going on for a
yeah, I
while.
was gonna say
Yes.
I watched a video from a Black creator that was, I really appreciate the emotional labor she was doing. I sent it to you, and she's like, people ask me
Yeah.
why I'm not fearful right now, and it's because for you, a lot of you white people, this is the first time you're feeling the pinch, but this is old news to
We had a
us.
400 years in the United States of the Black community
Yeah,
and the African community
yeah,
being just,
enslaved essentially.
yeah, in the worst way that you could
Yeah.
possibly imagine. The history books don't capture the
Yeah.
horror of it all.
Right.
So,
So Again, like, and we appreciate that. Again, we are of the belief that the opportunities still exist and it is literally our moral and ethical obligation
Yes.
to help craft and continue to craft the narrative of the future we want to create that is more equitable, that is better for the environment, that is more trusting, more loving, more empathetic. And again, it's not a Pollyanna view.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was thinking the same thing. It's like, oh, these guys believe in abundance. Don't they know that there isn't an abundance of things? I mean, what are they, idiots, you know?
I
And
took,
I think that what we're going to talk about in just a moment is
yeah.
even abundance is something different than what we've been fed. Because if we're fed that abundance is this, then you clearly can see we don't have an abundance that can keep you in that scarcity
Yeah,
mindset.
we talk about the fixed pie and
Yeah.
making more pie. I was thinking about when we would talk about this on stage. You remember the keynote we did in
Yes,
Latin America? I mean, you've done this skit before. We've done this
I
skit
did.
before.
I did it in Moscow one time.
But I just in Latin America, it was this huge stage, and there was thousands of people in that
Oh, yeah, there
room,
was.
and we were just like sort of specks on that
Yeah,
stage.
tiny, tiny.
We were talking about these shifts actually, and we got to this one, and we don't. People think that we rehearse these skits, and honestly, we don't. There's a lot of like a trust between us, obviously. Like we just go along with whatever the other one is doing usually, like we try to
Absolutely.
pick up what the other
Yeah,
one's throwing
that's
down,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So I don't think this is the first time you had done it, but I didn't know you were going to do it,
Right.
And so in the middle of this keynote, we're all like professionally dressed, we're on this huge stage. He starts pretending like he's digging in the stage. And so again, quickly,
The Argentinians are looking at me like this guy has lost his
yeah,
mind,
yeah, yeah. No, but
which is not
they
inaccurate.
were super into it though,
They
because
were. They love.
it's
People
like
love that kind of stuff.
who's doing that, right?
Yeah.
So you're digging, he's literally doing the shovel movement. And my role in that skit is just to be like the audience member, like, what are you doing? Like, that's so weird. Why are you digging? Like playing the role of, the unknowing. And then I mean you ham it up when you do
Oh
these
yeah.
skits,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
That's my many years of theater training.
yes, no, it's coming through. It's coming through. And so I know in this situation, you're like, I'm digging. And you're like, okay. And then I'm like supposed to say, you're digging for what? And you say, oh gosh, I'm digging for oil. And I said, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Take you a long time.
Yeah,
They have excavators for that.
yeah, yeah. And so then he'll say, oh God, and it's really hard. I'm like, yeah, it's super hard. He goes, yeah, especially since and he's like dabbing the sweat.
Ooh,
I'm dabbing the sweat
ooh,
off of
it's
him.
hot out here. There's this big ball of gas above me, burning my head. But anyway, back to the digging for the oil. If only there wasn't that giant ball of gas
Yeah,
above me,
yeah.
just burning, 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 that seems to have an endless amount of energy coming out of it. But
Wild.
whoa, back to the digging,
Yeah.
back to the digging
Right,
again.
right. So clearly there are examples, and we want to chat today in these live streams. Again, we don't want to recap what was said, although I do encourage you, if you're interested in this topic, those podcasts, we showcase how this is not a Pollyanna thought, because we actually use foresight tools. So we'll use CLA to unpack why we have a scarcity mindset. What are the underlying bedrock stories that are leading that reality, quote unquote, reality that we're seeing of scarcity bubble up to the surface? And what new bedrock stories would we need to be able to believe something different? We use trends to show how we can build a bridge from scarcity to abundance. And we showcase a lot of other tools throughout. So I would encourage you all, if you're interested in more specifics about how we can overcome a scarcity mindset, to check out the podcast. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how this is still obviously a relevant point. And what does it mean that we have a dearth of imagination, and why is that contributing to so many of the issues that we're seeing, right? So, I personally, when I think about the tragedy of the commons or the scarcity mindset, I can't help but think about what's happening in the US related specifically
Mm,
to Doge. It's not just about Doge. which is the
Department of Governmental Efficiency,
kill me.
which is just a made-up thing
I
that
know.
just got made up about 60 days ago.
Yeah, and it's not really specifically about that department. It's about the overall narrative of this administration and the dominant powers that be right now, which is one around scarcity. This idea that we just don't have enough, so we must cut. We must cut in order for there to be enough. So people have to make sacrifices, right? The pie is fixed.
Except for the people who are running Doge, because they are worth 400 bazillion
Well,
dollars.
yeah, there's the obvious inequity in that, the math
Yeah.
is, but why can't people who are arguably intelligent, some of them even college educated, why can't they see that fact? It's because story is so powerful. And this story of scarcity runs so deep that it causes you to distrust. It causes you to want to hoard even more so, creating more
Oh
scarcity.
yeah.
It's a
Yep.
self-fulfilling prophecy, which is what in essence they want. They want people to feel back on their heels constantly.
Constantly.
And personally,
It puts you in a
a
mental
fight or
mental
flight.
disadvantage,
Yeah,
fight and flight,
yeah,
and all of this is very easy to control. You can't control individuals and groups who believe that there is abundance.
yeah.
Not that that's you can't control them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because they have imagination and they can imagine a different
a way
future.
out or a
Yes.
way through, I
So
should say.
just, again, we don't want to make these so US centric. I think we're
Of course
seeing
not. Yeah.
similar
Oh
things
yes.
around the world, but I'll just share how this, you know, brought up for me, one of the reasons why I ultimately made the decision to leave finance
Mm,
within Disney. For those of you that don't know, most of my career at Disney was in finance. So I did
yeah.
the budgets and I did the 5-year plans and all
You
that good stuff.
sort of ran finances for Epcot at one point.
Yeah, yeah, I was at Epcot.
Whole experimental prototype
I
community of
did
tomorrow.
the overall theme parks.
That's cool. You ran finance for the community of tomorrow.
Yeah, I wish it
See, you
was.
were there
Yeah,
already.
yeah,
You
yeah.
didn't
No,
know.
I just
You
didn't
didn't
know
know.
it. I
You
just didn't
didn't
know it.
know.
I just
You
didn't
didn't
know. So yeah, so later on I was asked to transition to HR to do the foresight role that was
Yeah.
just created. But before that, I did the finance role. And so I was already growing tired of the cycle. And what I mean by that is the role of a finance professional, at least in Disney, and I know it's like this in a lot of organizational contexts, is just to constantly be trying to make a number. And that usually means cutting.
Yeah.
There's this idea that we have to cut, we have to cut, we have to cut. There's never enough. There's never enough. And I knew as a finance professional that sat in the operations,
Mhm.
I knew working hand in hand with my operators that there were creative, imaginative solutions to problems that would actually grow the pie, that would actually bring more guests to the table, that would actually improve the guest experience without necessarily negatively impacting the bottom line, and in some cases positively impacting the bottom line.
Yes.
It's the whole free lunch thing is a great example as well.
Mm.
We have in the United States, if you can believe it, a debate over whether children in grade school should receive breakfast and lunch for free. We, especially in communities where the
So wild.
socioeconomic situation is, close to or underneath the poverty level,
Oh
like on
yeah.
average.
Because there's plenty of poverty in the United States,
So, and
which is
it's
crazy.
systemic, right?
Yeah,
So
systemic.
but there's this debate that no, there's no such thing as a free lunch, which is a really interesting metaphor
Yeah.
for this, right? You have
Oh,
to,
they came up with all kinds of things. It's like, not to sidetrack you, because please stay on this. I
yeah,
love this topic.
yes,
But during the Reagan administration with good old Ronald Reagan,
yeah.
he came up with this phrase, welfare
Oh
queens.
yeah, and that
He made the
metaphor,
phrase welfare queens. They knew what they were doing.
that metaphor it has been studied,
Yeah.
should be continued to study, because that, when I tell you, do not tell me that CLA is not the most powerful foresight tool in the land. Shout out to Soho.
Shout out to Soho.
Shout out to Soho.
Go, Soho, go.
Go. Because OMG. OMG.
Yeah.
I mean, when I tell you that entered the cellular level
Yeah.
of people in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And it is aligned absolutely with the scarcity perspective, because the idea is someone's getting a handout
Yeah.
that doesn't deserve it. So just really quickly on the school lunch thing, because
Yeah.
I think it's important. Look, empathetically, ethically, morally, should children get fed at school?
I mean, come on.
Abso-fucking-lutely. Okay, well, this is ridiculous.
Come on.
But beyond that of human nature and, you know, taking care of our children, beyond that, if you look at research, it actually increases student performance. Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? Fucking
Wow.
giving them food
Wow.
makes them perform better.
Yeah, amazing.
Ultimately leading to better outcomes and greater, dare I say, efficiency and effectiveness. So it's not about,
even if we wanted to reach that, which I really don't give a rat's ass whether we're efficient or
I
not.
get it.
But even if we wanted to reach that, I mean, feed the children. I mean, what's the problem? But it's like I was watching a state council, not at the federal level, but at the state level here in the United States. They were debating their budget, and one of the members of the state council said, "We cannot feed children free lunches." This was 2 weeks ago. I think I saw this. And the woman looked at him, another council member, and she goes, "Can you hear yourself right now?" And he goes, "Can you hear yourself right now? There has to be some suffering if we're going to make ends meet."
It's wild. I mean, we could have a whole
Really?
We could have a
I
whole
think the wrong people might be suffering.
We could have a whole Nicole, we both said period at the same time. That was funny.
Period.
We're both on the same TFSX account. But even the term efficiency is rooted in scarcity.
It's rooted in scarcity.
Let's talk about where the idea of efficiency, just briefly, because there's a great history on this idea that efficiency is king.
Yeah, well, it comes from a lot of places. But and I would, again, here we are sitting in Florida, so we're talking U.S. centric to a degree. We try to be global. We know that the global is important. And this did turn out to be global because the West has had oversized influence on a lot of places. And there was a gentleman by the name of Fred Taylor, who was a manager consultant for companies back in the 1920s, 30s. Yeah. 20s, 10s, 20s, 30s. And 1910, 1920, 30. We're in 2000s now. And I just wanted to say really quick, the reason I hesitated is because a lot of people don't know this about Fred Taylor, because his ideas became so popular, we call it Taylorism now. And he literally was caught twice for embezzlement. He was a fucking grifter, and the guy was just an awful person.
So wait, you're saying that there was a white guy?
Yep. Who would have known?
Who was, unqualified at best.
Yes.
And a criminal.
Yeah, and a criminal. But they still, and he went down in history books as one of the greatest managerial developers.
Now, I happen to know that there was also a woman who was also on the similar level as him.
She was.
As
a matter of fact, she was very popular during the day.
Different, yeah.
Mary Parker Follett. And they actually would have debates, both in literature and probably in real time, in cities like Philadelphia, Chicago, around the United States. Taylor was arguing for what we now know as scientific management theory.
Okay. Where we can quantify inputs and outputs.
And how fast does it take for you to turn the widget to do the thing? And I need to get it, we got to get it down to a science. And then, it's like if on the assembly line they're doing this and they're doing this, then we'll be able to do this in 1.5 seconds, and then we'll save tons of money.
Perfect. Yeah. Sounds great. Sounds very familiar to
Let's
my
don't turn
current
people
state.
into machines, God forbid. But that Taylor said, yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
Mary Parker Follett said, people aren't machines. This is ridiculous. Why would we even try to do this? And she was like, we need to think about our organizations in terms of creative complexity, and to understand what wants to emerge, to evolve our organizations to be more moral and ethical, and that they might have started as one thing, but to know that they need to jive with the rest of life in a symbiotic way, so that my organization needs to change, so that I'm not just trying to sell a product, but I'm doing good for my community and all this. A terrible thought. Everybody totally rejected it. And she was a woman, by the way, so they were like, out of here.
Why don't
And
we ever listen to the woman?
throughout history, if we had
Friends,
listened to women, we would not be in
friends,
the place we're in right now. And I've got so many
friends.
great articles on feminist theory, and I can't wait for you all to see who we're going to have later in the year in our GFAC. A beautiful soul, Mina Salami, who just wrote a book, Can Feminism Be African? And she talks about how African is just a Western creation too,
Yeah.
because Africans didn't see themselves as African.
Yeah.
They saw themselves as the creative life, and it's like, get the hell out of here.
And Odell has entered the chat. And Odell, it is so nice to see you.
I
Not see you, but see you in the chat. She said,
Anne once called me the hardest working person in foresight. And Ann Odell, I mean, following her, this woman on Blue Sky, is like she's going to save the United States
yeah,
single-handedly.
yeah,
I'm going to tell you that right
yeah,
now.
yeah. Excellent. All right. So we're talking about let's talk about the flip side of this, imagination literacy.
Yeah,
Because that's where we want to focus. There's too much time already we've spent talking
I
about the
know.
current state. We want to talk about the desired state here, which is this idea that um if we can reframe the complex problem of scarcity into the wicked opportunity of imagination literacy, we're going to, instead of imposing sort of fixed ideas about what's possible, we're going to say we have to remain open to learning, unlearning, relearning, as a means to co-create novel capabilities and approaches. And we've often talked about this fact that a lack of imagination is the sort of the core reason why we have a lot of the issues
I
that we
think you
have.
said a dearth of imagination. Of course,
Dearth.
it's a feature. It's not a bug.
Yes, that's true.
Um, And I'm going to die on that sword because I'm sorry, it's a feature, it's not a bug. But this is sort of a meta to start this all off, because it's like we're imagining a new thing, and it's imagination literacy. It's like, how do you reimagine these things that
Yeah.
are in the zeitgeist, like welfare queen, and well, children might have to suffer because we don't have enough money for it, but we do have enough money for our military budget,
Yeah.
trillions of dollars every year. Yes, tragedy of the commons, and as Anne says, there are finite resources on Earth, and this is again where you can get this Pollyanna. It's like people pretending like there's infinite resources.
Yeah.
Abundance isn't about infinite resources, and imagination literacy is not about infinite resources. It's about the fact that there is enough, and there always has been and always
Right.
will be enough. But when you can't get enough, then you start portioning that out and becomes a tragedy of the commons. And again, that's a feature, not a bug.
It's also about how we measure success, and
Yes.
the fact this whole infinite growth, as Anne mentions, it's like that's what's not tenable. This idea that, the way that we should, measure success, or the way that we'll know we're successful, is by continually upping the CAGR and
That's right.
increasing and, leveling up our expectations. Um, you know, Again, it's two sides of the same coin, which makes it a really interesting conversation. Because again, you can, where was it that we were? Oh, in New Zealand, where the person said, how I won't be rich if there's not poor people.
Oh yeah, we were
Someone
working
actually
for the
said that.
ports of Auckland. It wasn't the ports of
It
Auckland that
was
said
not
it.
the ports of
It was
Auckland.
somebody that came in from another adjacent industry, and he was actually the CEO. I'm going to say who it was. It was the CEO of the the tugboat industry in New Zealand, and he said, "This is ordained by God. I can't be rich unless there are poor people, or I wouldn't be rich. There has to be poor people for me to be rich." And everybody in the room is looking very sheepishly at him. Some of them thinking, I know this is wrong, but I probably had the same thought.
Yeah, I see
And
you
some
saying
of
the
them is
quiet part.
shame, and some of them is
He
shame.
said quiet part
Yeah,
loud.
yeah, we shouldn't do
Um,
that. So
yeah, I mean, I love that Nan, the Habitat
that's right.
for Humanity founder. These aren't, you're
That's
right.
right.
This is also exciting that it's not new ideas,
It's not.
friends.
It's nothing new. It's
It's
nothing.
just we have to continue to beat the drum and
That's right.
say, like, this is the future that's possible. This is not Pollyanna.
That's right.
This is not ridiculous. It isn't like some incredible example of fortitude and strength to somehow pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Like that narrative as well, it keeps people locked in these systems of oppression and
Oh
poverty
yeah.
because we've sold them this belief
Oof.
that if you don't, make yourself a self-made man, then you are a failure. And what's keeping you from being successful is the fact that you're not trying hard enough. If we could instill in people imagination literacy, which is again very much akin to foresight and futures thinking.
Oh yes,
Okay.
of
So
course.
within all of these wicked opportunities over this year that we're going to talk about, these next 7 months, you're going to hear the fact that um, equipping people with a foresight mindset, bringing them along with some of these tools actually unlocks these wicked opportunities
That's
in
right.
and of themselves. So we
That's right.
had the answer all along. You had the ruby slippers
Yes.
because we really believe everybody has this ability. And if you're listening to us, you likely already tap into that. And when we talk about democratizing the future and foresight, we're talking about giving you all the confidence through these engagements and through these resources to go back to your communities as a trusted advisor, as a trusted colleague, and helping them
That's right.
unlock their own foresight and futures thinking ability. Because once it's unlocked, once they see
Yep.
what is possible, once they're able to decipher the current external environment and the trends. And we've talked about this before in this series already. This idea that be careful what trends you're populating. Be careful what trends you're saying are trends
Yeah.
because a lot of times the trends that we're seeing in the media and even among many futurists are ones that are promoting the current oppressive systems.
Yeah. Well, you put me on the soapbox, so sorry, but
Do
it's like
it.
where
Here it is. Hop on.
where are they born out of? They're born out of the system that we're presently in. Imagination literacy says there's more to futuring than talking about how we extrapolate the trends that have been offered to us by people that are creating the future for you. It says that we can imagine a different world altogether. And let me tell you that as somebody who has a master's degree in foresight, you do not have to have that to think about the future. But I'm gonna say something that I don't usually say because I don't want people to think that I have a master's degree in foresight and I'm setting myself apart from everybody else, and you can't think about the future the way I do. That's not true because foresight and future thinking actually is a biological, psychological, and sacred dynamic of all living things. However, there are studies in it. And I appreciate the fact that there is, that in our master's and PhD programs in foresight, we don't just study. You might think that it's just like 2 years or 3 years of trend hunting. There's very little of that. It's really about civilizational development, social change theory, regenerative systems, transformational. We're not thinking about trends, but the popular way that it's being presented is trend hunting, trend hunting, trend hunting. Where are those trends coming from? Let me pick on AI again, since everybody knows I pick on it so much, but this is just an example of many other trends. AI was created by five not brilliant, actually not brilliant, white guys who get loans from the government. And they know that if they can monetize this computational development, then they can make more money. And which one of them can become the first trillionaire? And so they've got us thinking that we just have to go like, oh, well, how can we make sure that AI becomes something that will help us? And we'll do the best we can. And recently in an article, I wrote a phrase, futuring to the system, which is a play on the term
Teaching to
teaching to the test. And if you've never heard this phrase, teaching to the test before, It means that in the United States, they created these systems for teachers, and it's like, stop teaching them all this extracurricular stuff. They've got to take these standardized tests. We need to know if they can pass these standardized tests. And so, all quarter long or semester long, you should be teaching only to get them to pass the test.
Yeah.
Nothing less, nothing more. In the box of what these kids need to know, they don't need to know anything outside that box. We're going to make sure that they get high scores on these tests. And it's awful because it blocks the imagination of kids to think and learn and explore their world. And now we're robots and we're machines.
Yep.
Well, the same thing can happen to any field, doctoring to the, doctoring to the doctors, to the medical system. Futuring to the system means I can only think about the future in terms of what you gave me. I saw Wendy Schultz talking about this one time. She's like, be careful whose future you're extrapolating, because they have a future they want you to fulfill. And that's this tragedy of the commons.
Yeah.
The future is going to be the tragedy of the commons. And so when I think of imagination literacy, it's not just imagining how we can use AI better, imagining how we can use bike sharing better, imagining how we could use whatever the case, you pick your favorite trend better. But it's also saying, like, if there were different worlds for us to live in and another world is possible. Dougal Hine has been on this rant recently, and he's been saying, when a world is coming to an end, when you could tell that its story doesn't have any chapters left, when its future has no runway left. And he's like, he believes, I happen to believe like he believes, that the world that we're in is coming to an end and a new world is being born. And it might take 100 years, or maybe, hopefully, it only takes a couple of months. I would not. You're not betting on the second.
I'd be a fan of that.
You're not betting on the second one. It's not. Michelle James gets on to me. She says, like, stop saying it won't be in your lifetime. It will be.
Okay.
So
gold star for Michelle James.
Gold star for Michelle. And and it's not on, thank you, Petty. It's not on the US, because we definitely don't want this to be US centric. And so I really appreciate people getting on here and saying this is what's happening here and here and here. And so back to my point again, we often future to the system because that's all we know to do.
Yep.
And so it's like, oh, well, here's the trends. We're going to trend hunt. We're going to make a trend list. Da, 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 da. But when we say imagination literacy, we're talking about imagining other worlds besides the system that we even have now. I was turning around earlier because I was looking for Graeber and Wingrove's book, The Dawn of Everything. It's not in here. No, you would know because it would take up half the room.
A fun fact.
This is a bazillion page book.
Fun fact. Frank, for his birthday and for Christmas, which are back to back,
my favorite,
received a couple of gifts that were right up his alley.
Yes.
First, he was given a stamper embosser.
Yes. So now it's like there's this little
gold
embossing thing.
It says from the library of Frank W. Spencer, and it's got a robot on it, and it makes gold emblems. Right.
It might pass me a book.
Okay. Is it in one?
We'll see.
You've already stamped these?
Is it in there?
I don't think so. Let's see.
It would be right in the front.
Yeah. This one does not have it. I do not see.
No, it would be right in the front of it. Oh, there you go.
No.
No?
None of those have it. And then a follow-up gift.
I was going to show you.
So that's more of the analog gift. The more tech gift he got was an actual handheld scanner.
Like you see at the grocery store where they're like, beep, beep.
And he could scan the barcodes of each book, and there's a tool online that catalogs them for him. So he is officially a librarian, which he always was in spirit. But the quantity of books that he has warranted some type of system.
Yes, and I want to let you all know that once I catalog all my books, and I still got a ways to go, then I can share the link with you. Come to my library.
That's cool. That's cool.
And then you'll see what drives me, what kind of things drive me. Like, I want to give an example, for instance, of not futuring to the system, but having real imagination.
Let's give him an example.
So there was a gentleman named Andre Gorz. He was a philosopher.
Okay.
And what he really was wrapped around the axle about back in his day, because this is the early 1900s, late 1800s.
They probably weren't talking about it as wrapped around the axle, but we get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like Nan said, this is pulled up by the bootstraps, was actually a phrase to
say something ridiculous that was
Yeah,
not
so it's
possible.
absurdity, right? And now it's
And
like
now
you
it's like,
literally
do
are
it,
expected to do it.
do it.
That's just say something to you about our system that
That's
we're in.
ironic. Now that's ironic.
Isn't it ironic?
Don't you think?
Don't you think? It's not rain.
Okay.
That's not ironic.
No.
It's just rain on your wedding day. Sorry,
Okay. We've
weather.
already
Weather
had
is
this
weather.
conversation. Let
Um,
it go.
Andre Gores would not have been a fan of saying the future of work and then going like, well, it could be that we work more hours,
We
we
work
work
from home.
less hours, we work from
We work with
home.
AI.
You get to work with a pet in your lap, you know? What is the future workout? There'll be cubicles. There won't be cubicles. I'll float above my desk, you know? It's like I'll wear virtual goggles while I be whipped from behind by my boss, you know, to work harder.
Who's your boss that's whipping you right now? Wait, not it.
Andre Gores would say, no, imagination is what if there was no work? Because he was like,
Yet.
work is an invention of labor and capital. And they want you to think that you have to work like this and that it came down from God. God ordained work the way we know it. And then we just have to say, futuring is like imagining how we work faster, work better, work a little less, but still work. And Andre Gores was like, labor we weren't meant to labor that way. Work is not supposed to be that. So I won't go into the rest of what but Gorsian theory looks at work very differently.
And work
That's
is,
why I was looking for, go ahead.
no, I was going to say work is a really good example of a scarce system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his big thing was like, he had labor theory and what labor was created for, what it did.
The system of work, I'm oversimplifying, obviously, because I haven't studied this, but the system of work essentially exists because there's an inherent distrust in that, we won't be fairly compensated or not everyone will be doing their fair share.
It's right back to that again, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's really hard for us, but I'll say something that a lot of people would probably just be like, I don't agree with that. And I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. But it's like, if we had 25 million people in this country who genuinely were like, I am lazy. I refuse to do my fair share. I refuse to work. I'm capable of working. I just won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, well, we should not support them because, scripture say if nobody will work, they shouldn't eat, whatever. Yeah. And I'm getting this metaphor from somewhere. The reality is for us to still be moral and ethical humans, we just need to feed them anyway.
Yep.
I don't care if they're lazy. That doesn't mean everybody's lazy, and it doesn't. And you know what? There'll still be plenty of people to get like whatever the work done.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, well, we're going to let 25 million people starve because they're genuinely lazy. I guarantee if they're starving, they're not. It's not because they're lazy. They're starving because of the system. Anyway, there's so many other examples of this imagination, literacy, thinking outside the system. That's why I was looking for the Graeber and Wingrove book because there were a lot of civilizations before the ones we live in.
Yeah.
And they didn't work the way our civilization worked. Yeah. Our civilization is not heaven sent. And as a matter of fact, I would even argue it went backwards a good bit.
In some ways. Yeah, I mean, even
I'm saying a lot of ways, but we might disagree about
that. That we educate. Like, why is education not free? Why is education not free in all places?
And just look different than it does, So, but yes, definitely. Why isn't it not free? There's so much in terms of imagination literacy, and I was thinking about. Let me pick on AI again for a moment, since it's so popular everywhere. That's one of the reasons I pick on it over and over again is because it's just everywhere.
Well, I think AI
has consumed our thought.
It's one of those things now that people are like, well, it's a given.
It's a given. And actually, it's not a given. It's like, I was thinking about this. Like, let's see how this sits with you. You don't have to agree with me on this, by the way. But like, we were talking yesterday about things that are woo-woo. So if you're hearing that and you're like, what does he mean by woo-woo? It sounds like Frank's being silly. That's sort of what it means. Like woo-woo is this phrase that you say like, ooh, that sounds like something that's not like practical and tactical and legitimate that I can wrap my head around. It's like, we're very out there. It's like, woo-woo, it's that's not reasonable. It would never take place. It's so woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
And usually when we think of that, we're thinking about somebody sitting around, meditating and they're like off in a woo-woo land or something, right? I got thinking last night, think about the fact that we're building a machine to replicate the worst aspects of the human mind, efficiency and productivity, and it eventually is going to have its own general intelligence. And there'll eventually be machine wars versus human wars. And that is the woo-wooest thing I've ever heard. That is the fucking woo-wooest thing I've ever
I
heard.
said I dropped the F-bomb and you were just like, yes, I like that we did that today.
But it's like, but we think planetary intelligence, PI, instead of AI.
We think that's crazy.
That's woo-woo. And we've never spent any time studying the fact that the planet is this symbiotic intelligence. And we're like, we don't have any money to study that or to worry about that or do anything with that, but we're going to make machines instead. I just think that's crazy. I think it's the woo-wooiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So don't call my stuff woo-woo when you're like involved in like, I'm going to make a machine that can think for everybody and do all the efficiency work. I think you're the woo-woo one, honestly.
And so there.
And so there, take that.
Take that.
But I mean, we talk about so many things like this, like imagination literacy is about collective consciousness, or Gaia, or boundaryless education, as you just talked about, or as our good friend Camilla Mazzini Allister, we did this interview with her, talks about online embodiment, and that we want to be everywhere all at one time, and the online environment gives us a chance to do that. This is imagination literacy.
Imagination literacy is not lifelong learning. It's lifelong unlearning, relearning.
Yes, that's so good.
And so I think the unlearning part is the toughest part. And that's what we need to unlearn. We need to unlearn scarcity as a given. We need to unlearn the fixed pie. We need to unlearn efficiency as the answer to everything. And again, foresight helps us do that. Foresight, with its tools and methods, helps us do that. If you want to listen to us go through that process with foresight tools, I encourage you to go back to these podcasts. And again, we've curated those on my TFSX. And you can gain access to the course, How to Thrive at Uncertain Times, through your membership to the collective on my.tfsx. It's $165 a year. Next month in our live stream, we will be talking about the People Cloud, which is talking about the future of work. It's really sort of referring to how we can collaborate more effectively across the world, and how we're seeing this emerge.
And how we're meant to really, as a species and as a symbiotic part of the rest of the universe, be thinking less about individualism and more about connective, collective, cooperative, collaborative, co-creative, right? That's where I am you and you are me, and we are all together as John, Paul, Ringo, and George.
I may be mistaken, but I think this is the one where we're unpacking the traditional ideas around generations.
Yes, of course.
And I think that's super powerful.
Like generational warfare.
Yeah, even if it's not generational warfare, even if it's, to your point, silos around political ideologies and that sort of thing. So really, we're going to be talking about how the wicked opportunity here is dismantling those man-made silos and helping people, work more collaboratively and collectively. So if you want to be prepared for that discussion, even more so, again, encourage you to join us on the collective on my TFSX. Check out How to Thrive in Uncertain Times. There's a course schedule there that tells you which podcast you should listen to in advance of our live stream next month. If you just want to participate in the live streams, that's fine too. This will be recorded and sent out. What else do we want to share? We have some.
I just feel, I know we want to share, but I feel like I need to sort of do a little wrap up thing.
Oh, please.
And I want to capture this potentially for like a short clip. So what we were trying to say today to a great degree, and dive into the course at my.tfsx.com, and you can really, do the exploration for yourself, because that's the point.
Yeah.
I hope all of you who are hearing this will do more imagination featuring and a little less, at least a little less, if not a lot less, just, trend analysis, because we need that. Foresight as activism and foresight as resistance means that we have to imagine different worlds. This world is coming to an end. As Anna Dale says, Jungian archetypes, and it's like the narcissist wants to be in power, and our system awards power to narcissists because they are the ones who gravitate towards it, right? And so now we're being run by the narcissists, right? We need more futurists to be diving into imagination featuring and less trend hunting. And if we have more of that, then you're not gonna see 5,000 trend reports on the 5 trends that we keep talking about over and over again, and how we can extrapolate them for greater monetary gain. And it's like that's just not going to get us to the world that we need to be in. So I am simply encouraging all of you to dive into this imagination futuring and less of the futuring that we do today. That is that
And
organiz
extrapolation.
that don't think for a moment organizations don't need this. Organizations need to be hiring futurists like that will lead them through. And if you want to use tools, use CLA and tools that lend themselves more towards transformational futuring. We just did this with Lululemon, and the outcome was spectacular around what is in their DNA and their higher order purpose, and how can they be a company that really dives into collective well-being in their neighborhoods and love that they were really founded on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So we've hoped that we've inspired and encouraged you. Share this recording, this live stream, and the future live streams with your colleagues and with folks that you think would benefit from this. Again, we hope to see you on My TFSX. We have an exciting announcement that we'll be sharing in April about a new opportunity to engage with us as a host on My TFSX, and more information will be
Yes.
coming out on that. So if you're looking for ways to establish yourself as a futurist, either inside your organization or publicly, we hope that this new program will support you to develop the confidence and the financial support that you need to be able to launch that. So that's coming, that announcement's coming in a couple of weeks, and we'll have an info webinar in May. So more to come on that. We've got the Dragonfly Journey
Session 2 is coming up April 22nd, but between sessions, we're always discussing already inside of the Dragonfly Journey, which is at my.tfsx.com. So come join the collective, and you can be a part of the Dragonfly Journey, our ongoing holoptic foresight dynamics discussion.
Yeah, that one's really special because those sessions are not recorded. And so while you
Safe
could,
place of trust and talking,
yeah, so
communing. Yeah.
it's really a wonderful opportunity to connect with people across the globe that share these ideas. So we hope you all have a good rest of your day. Here we are at the end of March, believe it or not, moving
Wow.
into April.
Wow.
We want to tell you all that we love you all. We care about you deeply. And
That's
if
right.
there's anything that we can do to help you in your foresight efforts, please do not hesitate to give us a call. So we'll see you next time.
Take
Thank you,
care, everybody.
everybody.
Bye-bye.